just reading my favorite book, the Jesus Storybook Bible, and getting ready for the children's sermon. Thanks for tuning in. This week, we will be reading A Giant Staircase to Heaven. Now, here's the thing. I always like to try and pick a reading that at least lines up with what we're talking about on Sunday morning during the church service. We're running out of stories in the Jesus Storybook Bible, so it's getting harder and harder to find a story that's the same as what's on Sunday. We won't be reading this one during the church service on Sunday, but this story is all about humility. And I think if you listen on Sunday, Pastor Gary during his sermon is going to talk about humility, and you'll notice how some of the other Bible readings also address this topic. Once again this week, I want to thank Jason Jaster. He's going to be helping me out with some of this. You'll see him in just a second here. But first, let's get right to it. Let's read A Giant Staircase to Heaven. See you back here in a couple minutes. A Giant Staircase to Heaven. Noah and family lived in the land, and his children and children, and those children had more children, and then those children had even more, and well, you get the picture. Until there were lots of people on earth once more. Now, back then, everyone spoke exactly the same language, so you didn't need to learn Swahili or Japanese or anything, because you could say hello to anyone, and they knew what you meant. One day, everyone was talking, and they came up with an idea. Let's build ourselves a beautiful city to live in. It can be our home, and we'll be safe forever and ever. And then they had another idea. And let's build a really tall tower to reach up to heaven. Yes, they said, we'll say, look at us up here. And everyone will look up at us, and we'll look down on them, and then we'll know we are something. We'll be like God. We'll be famous and safe and happy, and everything will be all right. So they got to work. Brick by brick, the tower grew higher and higher until it soared above the city, touching the sky. They built stairs in the tower to climb to the top. It was like a giant staircase to heaven. Look, they cheered, we're the ones! See what we can do with our very own hands! They were quite pleased with themselves. But God wasn't pleased with them. God could see what they were doing. They were trying to live without him. But God knew that wouldn't make them happy or safe or anything. If they kept on like this, they would only destroy themselves, and God loved them too much to let that happen. So he stopped their plans. One morning, they went to work as usual, but everything was different. Their words were all new and funny. You see, God had given each person a completely different language. Suddenly, no one understood what anyone else was saying. Someone would say, how do you do? And the other person thought they said, how ugly are you? It wasn't funny. You could be saying something nice like such a lovely morning and get a punch in the nose because they thought you said, hush up, you're boring. You couldn't even say pardon to check if you've heard right because no one understood that word either. It wasn't easy to work together after that. As you can only imagine, people were always quarreling and fighting and getting in a dreadful muddle and becoming grumpier and grumpier until at last they were all too cross to keep on building and just had to stop. After that, people scattered all over the world, which is how we ended up with so many different languages to this day. You see, God knew, however high they reached, however hard they tried, people could never get back to heaven by themselves. People didn't need a staircase, they needed a rescuer. Because the way back to heaven wasn't a staircase, it was a person. People could never reach up to heaven, so heaven would have to come down to them. And one day, it would.
Yeah, look at me, almost God. Look at me, almost a God. Man, look at me up here. I'm almost God. I'm almost God, I'm so high up. No matter how hard you try, I guess you just can't be God.
Welcome back. So, isn't that a good story? It's a really interesting one about how the people wanted to work their way up to God. They lost sight of God being in control, didn't they? They needed a little humility to remember that God is God and they are not. And then our friend Jason did a wonderful job illustrating that point all the more. Yeah, God is God and we are not. Humility is a really big part of being a person of faith. And so we want to put our faith into practice. And here's the homework assignment I have for you to try this week. Take some time and find a rock, something big, something heavy that you can hold on to, and talk about your problems with God. Look at the rock and think about the problems that you have, things that aren't going well, things that you wish could change, and feel the weight of those problems, and then let it go. Go throw the rock into the woods somewhere. Be safe about where you throw the rock, or just drop it on the ground. But do something that physically represents letting go of the problems and the struggles that you have. Stop trying to be God. Let God be God, and let go of your problems. Let God handle it this week. I'm Pastor Nate. This has been the Children's Sermon. Thanks for watching, everybody. Bye-bye.